All right, guys, welcome back to the Tough Lift Podcast. This is episode 22 of season 2, and I'm your host and the only guest today. For today's episode, I figured I'd kick it back to solo mode for an episode. And today we're going to be talking about mental toughness. All right, we're going to be talking about a couple topics on mental toughness, but kind of just sitting down and chatting on what it is, how I define it, some life experiences that I've gone through myself on the topic, because I always find it really interesting when people try to be tough or act tough or any of these things that we see, because I do think it's very important in sport to develop this topic, but I also think that it's also done incorrectly a lot of times. It's something we've seen in the past get done very poorly in sports coaching, especially at like the high school and younger levels. That has actually gone to the limits of, unfortunately, verbal and physical abuse in sport, and also to the degree of where athletes have taken it the wrong way and done some damage to themselves, unfortunately. So I think teaching this and advocating this in the right light is super helpful. I think, especially in our sport of weightlifting, and this sport directly that I work in, which is Olympic weightlifting, it is a topic that needs to be talked about more, because I think people just need to develop, for this sport in particular, a little bit more grit when it comes to certain aspects of the lifts, such as pushing through well-positioned sticking points in lifts, where because they meet resistance, they give up very quickly, even though they're in a good position. This is similar to like on a soccer field, they're in the last, 5 minutes of that game and they're just exhausted. Their legs are just, cramping up, but they've got to keep running. And it's exhausting. It's so tough to keep moving, and you just want to give up. But in actuality, like you can push through cramps. You're not going to damage yourself long term. I'm pretty sure there's some studies et al. That prove that. And you'll be fine. But you've got to learn. You've got to dig in. You've got to find that. I think some of the topics that I'm also going to talk to, they also help you kind of learn and self-manage when mental toughness is actually just kind of like psychosis, and you need to kind of self-check also of are you being healthy with what you're doing right now? Because I think, and I've experienced this many times with athletes, is sometimes people's perceived mental toughness is actually just really unhealthy habits of self-abuse or mental abuse on themselves as well. So we'll kind of talk about that. Just a fair warning, I do go into some adult topics on this podcast. I am going to talk about my experience in Iraq. I am going to talk about my experience in Haiti. These are two topics that molded me. They molded the person I am today. Some of these topics have been seared into my brain, unfortunately, and I do have those experiences. And they have, again, like I said, kind of turned me into who I am today, or got me through some stuff due to those experiences. But you can skip through those if you want. But talking on the topic, I was asked by an athlete, and I've been asked before, how do you get mental toughness? Or sitting down with an athlete that was kind of having like a breakdown of sorts, or having issues because they didn't want to go through the hard training, or it was hard, or they knew what was coming up was hard in life, and the combination of training. Like, how do you do it? How do I work on it? Like, okay, I'll just decide one day, quote unquote, I'm going to be mentally tough. And it's not one of those days you just wake up and you fucking go psycho mode and charge up like an anime movie and go at it. There's no montage. There's no Karate Kid montage where 5 minutes happen. You've decided you're going to be a badass and it happens. Mental toughness, physical toughness, it is something that is developed over years and over time. It's a life montage. So I've been asked multiple times. This is, I guess, my official video talking on it, or my feedback on it. And hopefully, again, with the point of the podcast, this will help somebody out there with developing theirs, or at least give them a jump start to it. Everything on the podcast, I always try to do to help at least one person out there and not repeat just the same shit that's already been out there on podcasts first. So we're going to start off with a favorite topic that Coach Tracy loves to bring up because she knows it irks me, and it's actually our friend David Goggins. So, those of you that don't know, David Goggins is a very well-known American Navy SEAL that has gotten very famous doing speeches, and his book, it's a very good book. I highly recommend you read it. He's done multiple speeches. Also, you can watch on YouTube. Lots of good information. I think when David talks about his experience in the military, also what he did to get in the military, his story from being extremely overweight to getting in shape, all these things that are factual events, they've all been vetted, are incredible stories. All right, I think they're awesome. They're great motivators. I myself have read and listened to them, and extremely, extremely motivating stories. I like everything he's done. Everything related to those topics, awesome stuff. Even his speeches that he gives, I think they're really good stuff. Those of you that know me know my own personal issues with him. Doesn't need to be related to the podcast, whatever. It's not important to this. So, but what I'm going to give him a ton of credit for is he talks in one of his speeches, and I think he hits the nail on the head. And we're going to open this podcast up with, he says, too many people have kind of a fake concept with what they want, and they're not getting surface level enough with what they actually want. By what he means by that is like people aren't going down to like the base mineral level where there's nothing left on the surface of what they actually desire to obtain. And it's very easy to give up on because they haven't gone to that actual level of desire. So when you're that topical and surface level, it's very easy to be lazy and quit and half-ass on. So for example, like somebody's saying they want to lose 10 pounds. It's super fucking easy to sit there and just be like, I want to lose 10 pounds. And, they tell their colleagues, and then it's like, all right. And you check in with them in 5 months. It's like, have you lost that 10 pounds? It's like, oh, not yet. The life's been busy. I haven't started. And like, if I'm targeting, I'm not meaning to, but it is what it is. I was one of these people. It's not deep enough. And like, speaking to my own story, I got on the scale months ago, and I fucking saw the scale get to 123, a number I've never seen ever in my fucking life on a scale, to the point to where I actually knew deep down that when I put my fucking vest on with my equipment on at a certain point, filled with ammunition, grenades, I would weigh 123. That sent a gigantic fix your fucking shit, Adam check vibration through my fucking body. And that was the mineral base level change your fucking life moment that David was talking about. Another example of this is when athletes will sit there and, I want to fill in subsection because their friends on the team also want to do this. The team wants to win states, right, on a soccer team. But 90% of the team isn't like doing anything besides going to soccer practice and then playing at the game. They're not training on their own. They're not showing up to extra practices. They're not going to extra camps and clinics. Like, it's very, very topical level bullshit. And they skip practices, stuff like that. It's all very surface, like, it's not real. And it's super easy to quit on. And that's one of the issues, and what he talks on is a lot of people don't dive deep enough. And that is one of the things when it comes to being tough and developing mental toughness that I think is why a lot of people don't develop it until something like severe or they aggressively seek actually helps develop them into it. And in our sport weightlifting, we handle a lot of athletes that come in from all walks of life that sit there and say they want to do goals A, B, and C. And they never achieve it because they think it's just coming in and going to the gym. And really, it's all the other shit they do on the outside of the gym. It's sleeping right. It's eating right. it's reading books, it's watching video, it's studying your sport, it's asking critical questions to your coach, it's making sure you're doing it right. It's not just putting checks in the box. It's opening your mind to different concepts and theories. These other things that really will get you to where you want to be. And most people just sit there at the top and they don't ever push into those higher levels. So then when the goal doesn't happen, it's just, you know, oh, well, I tried. Well, you know, did you? Did you? Because if you actually were trying, you would have done X, Y, and Z, but is it because it was too hard? It was too hard to sit there and actually make the time to foam roll and stretch? Was it too hard to eat right? The mental toughness part, the physical toughness, when we said do the set at extra load if moving well, did you just say that was too physically demanding for you? You didn't want to push for everything. And that's where he again talks about that actual mineral base, nothing else on the playing field except that one goal in your life is what's needed and like you strive for. That's where you start making actual strides towards your goal and you actually develop mentally and physically, because everything literally depends on that moment. You know, it reminds me of one of my favorite Eric Thomas speeches where he is talking about this guru. If you've ever heard this, if you know me, you've probably heard this, but it's the guru talking. And he basically says, like, when you want your goals as bad as you want to breathe, then you're going to reach your success effectively. But, you know, the whole misconception also with like mental toughness and physical toughness, I think is also it's misperceived that it's just like being physically jacked and working out through like grunting pain or like running super hard to where you want to quit and you don't quit. And I think some of that is also like misconstrued. Like being tough is not like a 24/7 physical relation thing. Sometimes like being mentally tough is like going and seeing your dying relative. Like one of the hardest things I had to do was going and seeing like my great grandfather was passing. It was fucking terrible. But like, damn, dude, I had to. And like, I know a few of my relatives that like didn't, and I'm not like calling them out, but like they didn't. You know, like it's shitty. And that is a degree of like mental toughness that you have to like develop to do that kind of shitty stuff. Sitting there and like volunteering, like as a teenager, like volunteering at like soup kitchens and homeless shelters, like, yeah, it fucking sucks. And like, you don't want to do it. And it's sad and depressing, but like that develops you as a human being to ingest and be empathetic and develop emotional toughness and mental toughness that I think a lot of people like don't perceive and actually develops you in a way that other people don't get. So like mental toughness or toughness in general isn't always just a physical thing. That's the point I want to get across with that. So don't always look at it as a physical thing. It's not. That's bullshit. Before we go into these three topics, there's a story that I bring up all the time, and it's the dental tech story. And I went through Special Forces assessment and selection. I was a non-selectee med drop with 36 hours before. Not a part of the story, but it's a part of the story. One of the most incredible people I met at that was a dental tech. Scrawny fucking dental tech. And he actually made it all the way through and got selected. Everyone judged him because he was not big. He was not strong. But that kid had everything up here. And out of a gigantic selection course, because he was here and not here in the body and super strong or super big. He got average scores on all the runs in the STAR course and the PT, but he was here mentally. That motherfucker got selected. And that dental tech always reminds me that it's not always brawn that wins shit. And he was mentally tough. And that is what got him through. So again, it's not always the physical. But when we're talking on toughness, all right, in regards to mental toughness, I think about it And I have been taught by my peers that taught me things of this, which are my military commanders, a majority of them. I do have some personal people that have taught me toughness, some in negative ways. Like, I'm not going to lie. I had to get tough in certain ways, and we're not going to talk about those. I also had to get tough in some ways because those people were peers that were adults in my life that were positive ways that kind of like nudged me along and forced me into some scenarios that were like, you're now this person, you're now a leader, time to toughen up, you're in charge type of experiences. But in these three scenarios, these I think are where I grew the most. They're always kind of like some of the top experiences of my life. The first one where I think I definitely grew in physical toughness was again at SFAS, Special Forces Assessment and Selection, while I was in the military. My physical toughness was definitely being tested while on the STAR course. STAR course is a gigantic land navigation course in week 2 of selection course, and it's about 20, 25, somewhere in between there, kilometers of road marching at night through like the backwoods of North Carolina. So basically you're just doing what's called busting draw the whole time. You're not allowed to use roads or paths. You immediately get dropped. You're called a roadkill if you do that. And you're basically just walking through some of the shittiest terrain in the world. And you have to do land nav points with a compass and a map and a red light. And that's basically all you have. You have water, food, your supplies, and your pack. And it's terrible. Anyone that's ever told you that will tell you it's terrible. And like the whole week before that, you've been doing a shit ton of physical stuff, just getting, for lack of better explanation, your balls smoked the whole time. I, at this point, had massive holes in my feet. My heels had been just rubbed raw. We were putting tincture of bentonite, if you know what that is. It's basically when you put it on a hole on your foot, it's like a liquid glue, takes adhesion like immediately, and we put moleskin on it, but it basically felt like a red hot railroad spike going into the back of my foot every morning. My medic and me would put this on. So walking with that 2 weeks into this hellhole, I just hate life. I'm on my last point and I'm land navving, and I find out that I have fucking Scuba Road as my last point. And everyone that goes to SF school knows what fucking Scuba Road is. It's miserable. It's literally just a path you have to walk through because there's just marshlands on left and right, just wet, boggy grounds. And because it was my last point, I basically didn't have a choice. You're limited by time on this thing. I had road marched all night. I was time capped. I had to get to the point. I fucking had every excuse in the world to quit, because what they also do is they tell you like all you have to do is quit, and you literally get trucked to a nice warm new pair of clothes, because I was in the same dirty ass ACUs at that point that I had been in. I had an 8 besides the stupid ass snacks that I had. Just every reason to quit. Just exhausted. And like within 25 minutes, I'd be in that amazing, beautiful chow hall eating fucking cheeseburgers and french fries. And my last point was fucking Scuba Road. And I knew these fucking holes in my feet were only getting worse. It had been dewy all night. I was already soaked, basically. And I was now walking towards at least 100 meters, 200 meters, probably 100 meters of like fucking water on road. And if you like step to the left or right of this water in the road, you just fell off and we were soaked. Like it was going to get to my chest anyways, but I didn't want to go full plunge for the rest of this course. And every step I took walking there, I just wanted to fucking quit. Every excuse I could find to quit was just going through my fucking head. And I just knew that like I just had to keep walking. It was just keep walking, just keep stepping. And this is after my deployment too. Like I had already deployed and gone through a bunch of shit. Like bunch of physical shit that could easily replace this story for physical exertion. But like I I didn't have a choice to quit Iraq. I was in fucking Iraq. I put myself in this school. I did all the work to get to this school. And I could easily quit at this point. Um, but man, I just wanted it. I wanted to get this fucking point. I wanted to say that I did the STAR because it was one of the hardest, it is the hardest land nav course in the military out of all the branches. I'd already done the hardest obstacle course out of all the military branches. I already done the hardest PT tests and physical challenges out of any military tests. So like, I just couldn't find like the rationale, and I just kept putting left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. And that's all I remember. And in my head, I just kept fucking singing a stupid cadence, like in my head, every step, just singing this stupid fucking cadence. And when I got to Scuba Road, I remember I didn't even stop to look at the fucking water with my flashlight. I just walked right into it. I didn't plot anything out. I didn't try to like see where the shallow part is. I just said, fuck it. And I kept going. And I just walked right through that bitch, and I got through it, and I made it to my final point, and I was done for the night. And that story always continues to like reside in me of like, if I'm going to hit shit, I just fucking go at it. I don't think about it, and I go. And that was one of the big moments in my life where like physical toughness was developed every fucking step I took towards that goal. Mental toughness. Mental toughness is definitely a dark one for me. I would say that like I'm a mentally tough person because of some of the things I've done, some of the experiences I've been in, some of the things I've had to develop my own self in my life for. One of the things I mentally grew tougher out of was probably one of the shittiest days of my life. I've actually never talked about this on public forum, so interesting. The night that Sergeant Rodriguez was killed, and I was in one of the IEDs that I was really fucking rocked on. We won't go down the rabbit hole on that. But like, I was shook. The best explanation to give is like, I was fucking shook. And I was pretty mentally fucked up from this because just what took place after Rod got killed and Kazovac and all that. And that's the details we'll go in there. But I was ready to go the fuck home. That's what we'll say there. I went upstairs, and I don't know if my sister or dad will listen to this. I don't really care at this point. But I was fucking chain smoking my smokes like a fucking lunatic on the rooftop, just laying there in a ball, wanting to go home. I wanted nothing else to do with this fucking country. We'd already been there for months. But this one was the one where I was like, yep, that's it. I'm done. I'm out. Fuck this shit. I don't care about anyone else here. I want out. I want gone. I don't want to be part of this. I don't want to care. Nothing. I'm done. And it was like, to a degree, it was selfish. It was actually selfish as fuck. And I knew that, and I know that saying that out loud. And I'm also going to like excuse 18-year-old Matt for that. And it like, I was sitting up there just like contemplating life because where I was. And I was literally chain smoking through my pack of Reds and going on to my second pack, shaking, just fucking like talking to myself. And my platoon sergeant, Sergeant Kelly, came up, and he literally wasn't with us, but he knew what I was going through. And he came up and he looks at me because he had just checked in with me earlier, but like was checking in with me then. I was the youngest one in the platoon. No, I think Hodge was younger than me. So I was like second youngest in the platoon at that point. Maybe third. I don't know. Not that important. But like, he looks at me. He's basically, "Are you good?" I'm like, "Fuck no, I'm not good." And like, just started I don't even remember what I said. I was just fucking rambling. Like, I don't want to be here, basically, which makes sense. It's totally logical. And he asked me for a cigarette. I give him a cigarette, and he sits down next to me, and he like talks to me a little bit, and more or less, we talk, calms me down a little bit, army talk. And at the end, he goes, you need to remember that it could always be worse. You could be on fire. And I laughed and he laughed. And it wasn't like lowering the severity of the moment. It was comparing to like, you can always find a worse situation to be in. So you sometimes need to like pull yourself out of how bad you think it actually is. And since then, like I've used that line and I jokingly have said it with other athletes I have. I've written it on my weightlifting shoes. I've had it on, it's still written on my straps. Anyone that's ever used my blue straps at the gym, you can see it written on those. But it's always been like a constant reminder to me, like when I'm exhausted or I'm tired, it's not that bad. You could always be on fire. And it's not about like not caring. It actually is about caring. It's not that bad yet. It could always get worse. And like, it was the worst, one of the worst days of my life. And Sergeant Kelly, like, we talked about what we needed to talk about. And then he pulled me out of the pit a little bit by just giving me a comparison, basically, of like, hey, man, it could always get worse. And like, that moment was one of those moments where mentally I developed because I was able to draw myself out of a panic and actually compare myself to like a million scenarios where it could be so much worse. Because for one, I myself somehow, I don't know how to this day, was actually unscathed. I miss Rod. And like, he was a mentor and a teacher to me. And what happened was extremely unfortunate and terrible. Should have never happened, but that's war. But like, that whole scenario was fucked. But the whole fire team, the whole squad, could have had that happen to him. And that's like in war, something you have to comprehend. And that would have been worse. That could have been everyone on fire. And sometimes when you're training or you're on the field or in a game, you have to remember like it could be worse. It could be the worst. You have to find that mental toughness to sit there like through a set of 5 on back squats and be like, it could be worse. It's not a set of 6. And that's like enough to fucking get you through the grit for the day. Or sit there and just rationalize and be like, at least I don't have pulls. Sometimes that's enough. That's a way to develop mental toughness. Have a heavy day and then look at your program and be like, all right, at least tomorrow's lighter. You have to develop that type of stuff. The third way I kind of define toughness is kind of the third one, and it's a hard one. It's emotional toughness. And I think this is one that isn't practiced a lot. Because I think people like don't want to show their emotions. I think people don't know how to show their emotions a lot. It's something that makes you vulnerable. We'll use that key term. And emotional toughness is also not something that's shown, like I was saying earlier, through like acts of physical stuff. Emotional toughness is sitting there and like identifying when somebody needs you. Emotional toughness is sitting there and identifying when you need someone. Like as a male, I'm calling you motherfuckers out. Like, talk to people. My gender fucking sucks at asking for help. My background of veterans fucking suck at asking to talk to people about their feelings. Do it. It's part of developing. It will make you better and stronger. Going through shit that is like emotionally destroying you and working through and talking about it and observing it and experiencing it develops you emotionally to rationalize or experience things for when those things happen again, or when you are experiencing them in another light again. Like, one of the big ways I think I emotionally developed, ironically, was when I was in Haiti right after the earthquake. Like, I learned more about emotionally developing and emotional toughness being there, and controlling my emotions in multiple experiences. Some of which, like, I'm not going to talk about because they're just not great to talk about. And then other ones just like sitting there and talk about like times where I lost my emotional cool because I was hot and uncomfortable and it got me in trouble and I got lippy and had a fucking attitude and I wasn't able to control myself emotionally, and then learning how to control myself emotionally that led to getting things that I wanted for my fire team or what I wanted to happen in certain situations. That country drove me crazy in the experience that we had down there, and I learned a lot about myself down there. Um, those were experiences where like I also learned emotionally like when to pick the fight and when not to. So like physical toughness, mental toughness, and emotional toughness, I think are really like the tripartite, if you will, or the three pillars that like you actually build mental, like an actual toughness. We're just going to use the term toughness that you can actually then mentally dig or build on to push yourself into becoming like the next version of yourself. To where you can look back and be like, damn, look at me 3 years ago. Because it takes time. Um, it's again, like I said, it's not a montage. It takes time, and you've got to practice these things. You can't just sit there and work out all the time and think you're going to develop as a human being in these other areas. You're still the same person. You're just fucking stronger. You also can't just sit there and read a bunch of fucking self-help books and think you're going to develop mentally and physically. You need all these things. My own personal experiences are extreme. Like that's my life. Unfortunately, I've lived extremes. I don't think I'd honestly sit here and say that I wish I lived extremes my whole life, but it's just what I've done. It's the way the cookie crumbled. And I have other experiences. I could talk on all these topics, and they've all kind of filled the gaps to make me who I am, and I continue to grow, and I continue to grow right now. The Matt that is here now is different than who I was 5 years ago, and that person is different than who I was 5 years from there. I think people are afraid of like failure, and that's why they don't want to develop on these things. I think a lot of society right now don't want to develop themselves and don't want to push themselves into these toughness or pushing themselves or mentally digging, literally because of the fear of failure. It's like, it's not good to fail consistently. That's something that is 100% a real thing. Also, like, failing to fail is also fucking stupid. Sitting there loading up like your max rep back squat and going at it every day is fucking stupid. That's just fucking dumb. That's just dumb. There's nothing else to talk on. But like not sitting there and interviewing because you're afraid of negative feedback, that's fucking stupid. You're not going to grow mentally from that. Asking a friend for their opinion on something in a relationship that you're in because you're afraid that they might sit there and be like, hey, you are kind of reactive. You're not going to grow emotionally from that. Sitting there and getting up off the couch and going for a fucking walk 4 times a week because you're so sedentary, because you're afraid it might hurt or be sore after, isn't going to develop you physically. So you're definitely never going to develop the physical toughness. You'd rather quit or never deal with the emotions of quitting that because you're like so afraid of failure. Again, you're so afraid of failure to sit there and like not be able to say you did it, that you'd actually rather quit doing it before you even fail at the task. That's never going to make you develop as a human being. You have to fucking fail. to sit there and then draw conclusions from that failure to become a stronger, emotionally, physically, or mentally tougher human being. Because at least with failure, you can draw conclusions from it. You can say, what can I do better? Where could I have done better? What do I need more of in my life to do better? Then you can go practice those things and at least come back. You might fail again, but at least you've tried, and then you can go back to the drawing board. That's just how life is. Now, I promise, when they had fire for the first time, they probably burnt their fucking camps a few times and themselves. But eventually we mastered it. It's not going to be comfortable. That's the other thing, is like, you're not going to be comfortable doing some of this shit. Some of you guys live a life of comfort that is too fucking cushy. And you've got to get comfortable being uncomfortable if you want to develop as a human being. So you make the decision to develop and grow it. It can only be worked on by living through those experiences. So might need to get knocked down, get your fucking knees dirty a few times, but stand up, shake it off, take notes, and keep working on it. Learn about yourself. Look back. Hopefully you can look back at yourself 3 years from now and be like, hey, I made the decision to develop in that area, and I definitely think I'm a stronger, tougher version of myself. Because like the old adage, tougher people are harder to kill, and they're also just healthier. So kind of went on a rant here, but hopefully you guys like this. I think everyone is capable of being a mentally, physically, or emotionally tough person. Again, the dental tech proved that. You guys just got to work on it, and everyone's capable of it. It's one of the reasons I got into coaching, is I love watching people that come in and then just develop into fucking monsters. So if you guys like this, please like and subscribe. I hope you enjoyed. Don't mind the new background. We're renovating soon. It'll be nice and classy again soon. All right. Thanks for listening to Tough Love Podcast. More good content coming here soon. Adios.